Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The People's Union USA launching a week-long boycott of McDonald's, and some black franchisees, former black franchisees, say that boycott should happen. We'll talk with them right here on the show. Boy, folks are freaking out about the newly elected, the winner of the Democratic primary for the mayor of New York City. I'm trying to understand why y'all mad, because people actually voted. We'll talk with the author of a book that lays out the 400 years of protesting in America, plus the black teen who stabbed a young white man in Texas gets charged with first-degree murder. Plus, we'll talk about Shop Red Bag that offers an opportunity for many of these companies, black-owned businesses that had their products in Target, to share them and for black folks to be able to buy on an online platform. Folks, it's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling.
All right, folks, a national boycott of McDonald's is underway, led by the People's Union USA. They're accusing the fast food giant of backing away from its promises to the black community. Earlier this year, McDonald's quietly scaled back key diversity initiatives, dropping its aspirational representation goals and removing a DEI pledge for suppliers. The company claims it's just shifting to a more integrated approach to inclusion tied to business performance. But folks say, the community say, they see it differently. Now, in addition to that, more than 40 former black McDonald's franchisee owners are already suing the company. They allege systemic discrimination, and they've now joined the boycott. The former franchise owners are calling on the company to keep its promises, renew its commitment, and do right by the black operators who say they were denied a fair chance at success. McDonald's insists its commitment to inclusion is unwavering and says the boycott's claims are misleading. The boycott runs through June 30th. Joining us now is Quinn Rollins, attorney for the plaintiffs, and Kenneth Manning, a former McDonald's franchisee. Glad to have both of you here. First and foremost, Quinn, how many different franchisees are you representing in this lawsuit?
It's approximately 47, Roland, from all around the country, from Florida to Georgia, Illinois. It spans the gamut across the United States because they have a shared experience. And
what is it that they are alleging?
Yes, so we have multiple claims. The big claims are racial discrimination in contracting with McDonald's and racial discrimination in the leases they received. But ultimately, they are alleging that they were given stores that were less profitable in neighborhoods that they didn't necessarily prioritize, and they had unreasonable expectations about what these franchisees were able to do, had unreasonable expectations of timeliness. And some of that is because we argue and allege is because they were intentionally discrimination against franchisees because they were black, like Kenneth Manning.
And when you talk and when they talk about in terms of what's being unfair, are they alleging that the company put them in difficult positions to succeed and provided better opportunities, better locations for white franchisees?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the beauty of the court allowing, ultimately we believe they allowed this litigation to proceed. The franchisees that we represent, the individuals, will have an opportunity to explore all those white owners and create the evidence about the opportunities they received that our clients did not.
Kenneth, where was your store or stores?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Roland. My stores were located in two markets, in Montgomery, Alabama, We had 5 locations in that market. And then the next TV market was the Birmingham, Alabama TV market.
So you had a total of how many franchises?
I had 15. I did 15 stores in one night, Roland. I sold 3 of my restaurants to my brother, or at least 2 of the 3 to my brother. We were both in North Carolina at the time. And late 2009, early 2010, I did a deal for 15 restaurants in one night in both of those markets.
One second. When you say 15 restaurants in one night, what does that mean?
Yes, so I sold 3 restaurants on December 8th, 2009, and bought 15 restaurants on December 8th, 2009 in one night. That's correct.
Okay. And then what happened next?
Well, I picked up an additional restaurant. McDonald's called and asked me to help them out to avoid litigation from a white owner, actually, who was going to sue them in about 2 weeks. And McDonald's asked me to pick up this Centerville location in Centerville, Alabama, which I did sometime in 2011. And I did that. And so that became the 16th restaurant that I owned in that market.
Okay. So you own 16. Then what happened?
Well, I can tell you there was a deal that was offered to me when I took over the 15 restaurants. They would ask me to move up a rebuild of my West-South location 4 years earlier than it should have happened, or that we agreed to happen in the contract, in the purchase and sale agreement, with the intent for me to receive another restaurant, the Hope Hall location, which is about 1.5 miles down the road. After picking up the 16th restaurant, I get another call from the QSC VP, the Vice President of Operations, and stated that he was not going to award me that store and that he was going to award it to a white operator some 40 miles away. Of course, I pushed back and said, that's not the deal that we had. And he basically said, well, you're unexpandable. The team says you're unexpandable. The field service team says you're unexpandable. I immediately responded, I'm not unexpandable. And my last operator review suggested that I was unexpandable, said that I was unexpandable. He held to that and said that there were 2 standards. One, that if you buy a restaurant from the field, you can do that being unexpandable. But if McDonald's offers you the restaurant, you need it to be expandable. I said, well, McDonald's offers...
Hold up. For the people who don't, what does expandable and unexpandable mean?
It means you have an opportunity to grow your organization, right?
But I'm confused. You did that. You went from...
Oh, that's correct.
You went from 1 to 5 to 16. So what did they lay out to you what the definition of unexpandable means?
Well, they didn't. They told me that the field service teams suggested that I was not eligible to grow any longer, which shocked me. Quite honestly, I was offended, particularly since I said to the vice president that you called and asked me to purchase a 16th restaurant, and at that time I was unexpandable. And nowhere had I been notified that I wasn't unexpandable until they awarded this store, and that's the way it's going to be. So I can tell you what happened next, Roland. I saw the global chief of franchising at a meeting in Houston, and he said to me that I heard you making trouble down there in Atlanta. I said, well, what do you mean? He says that you are angry about not getting that store. I said, no, that's not what happened. The vice president has a right to award the store to who he wants to, even if he changes his mind, right? What I was concerned about was that the standard had changed and that he tried to convince me that there were 2 standards in play here. Now, I can tell you, Roland, I was the what they call the real team chair for the East Division, which was the committee that was an expert on the franchise agreement. Our role was to teach the operators in the division about the franchise agreement. So I was the last person to say that something in that franchise agreement or the rules, that I was not going to be one that didn't understand that. And so when I challenged them, they sent out 2 field service managers to do inspections late on a Friday night at my restaurants, which I told the franchising officer that I thought that was unfair and that sucked, basically. And from there, it just went on downhill.
Quinn, when we talk about your other plaintiffs, and I've heard and I've talked to different franchisees, former franchisees over the years, some complained about that people, first of all, don't understand the process, that most McDonald's are owned by individual owners. They're called franchisees. McDonald's owns the land, but McDonald's also has requirements. Some franchisees have said that they've been asked to do upkeep, to rebuild stores, things along those lines, and that's money that's coming out of their pocket. Besides what Kenneth has laid out, what are some of the other allegations that these former franchisees are making?
Sure. So the beauty of this lawsuit is there are individuals who come from different walks of life around the country, but they have shared experiences. One of our clients, he's been very outspoken. His name is Van Jakes. He's a former football player based out of Atlanta. And him and several other of our clients share stories similar to Ken. It's once they started expressing frustration with the unequal treatment, there was retaliation. And that's actually one of our claims, is that in many ways, some of our clients were forced out of the McDonald's system because they were getting out of line, asking questions, critiquing McDonald's actions in contrast with the franchise agreements. And McDonald's was asking them to play by a different set of rules. And that was especially concerning because for many of our clients, they were leaders in their respective regions. And like Ken, they knew the rules verbatim. Some of them helped craft the rules. And it is disparaging when they're asked to do things that other white owners specifically were not asked to do in their respective regions and around the country.
Let me piggyback on that for a second, Roland, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
When I went to sell my 3 stores to my brother, before I could even get it out, when they called and asked me who was I selling my 3 restaurants, there were 3 very good restaurants in North Carolina. Jeff Wilfong, QSCVP in Raleigh, said that he was not going to approve the deal. Not even had I sent the contract up or put in front of him any terms of the deal. When I put in front of him the terms of the deal, they denied the deal and gave a reason that was not a business reason. They went so far as to, after 3 months of going back and forth, conference calls, meetings, they decided to only allow my brother to buy 2 of the 3 restaurants. And went so far as to, and I can tell you, Marty Ranf went so far to take money from the company and give it to the operator who was going to buy the other store that they would not allow my brother to buy because the other operator did not want to pay me full value. So they put $170,000 into the deal, coded it something different, just so I could not sell my 3 stores to my brother. And then afterwards, I get a letter months later stating from Chief Legal Counsel of Franchising, John Richardson, stating that I could not buy the restaurants back from my brother when white operators routinely buy their restaurants back and forth from family members. There was no such rule. For a period of 10 years, there was no such rule.
Quinn, there was a period for almost 3 years where McDonald's had a black CEO over the company worldwide. That was Don Thompson. That was 2012, 2015. Please go to my iPad, guys. Come on. And this is Don Thompson here. The board felt the stock price had not recovered, and so then he was replaced by Steve Easterbrook. Quinn, do your franchisees allege that the atmosphere at McDonald's completely changed post Don Thompson? I know there are others have said that there were a significant number of African Americans who were in senior level positions when he was the CEO, and ever since then, that has changed dramatically.
Sure. I think that the respective clients have different views about their experiences with Don Thompson's leadership, but everybody shares a collective view that McDonald's is an institution, and it's only so much one individual can do. But certainly during the time of Don Thompson, franchisees continued to struggle. Not to say that he didn't put forth significant effort to try to improve that situation. But since the leadership of Chris Kay and Easterbrook, there has been a dramatic decline in the number of black franchisees and experiences. And our clients like Ken Manning can speak directly to what their experiences were during those changes.
Well, it is, so again, you have 47 folks who are involved in this particular lawsuit. And so certainly keep us up to date what happens next as it relates to your lawsuit against McDonald's.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you, Roland, for having us.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, I'm going to introduce my panel now, bring them into. First of all, before we do that, this is the statement that McDonald's released. It says, quote, as a brand that serves millions of people every day, McDonald's opens our doors to everyone, and our commitment to inclusion remains steadfast. We welcome honest dialogue with the communities we serve, but we're disappointed to see these misleading claims that distort our values and misrepresent our actions. Now, also, of course, not tied to this lawsuit, McDonald's recently settled their lawsuit with Byron Allen, where he alleged that the company was not doing business with him advertising-wise. And again, that lawsuit was scheduled to go to trial, and then it was settled. Full disclosure, McDonald's previously advertised with us here at the Black Star Network. They have not done so in 2 years, and so the last time they did was in 2023, and that was the last time they did. So that's what happened there. All right, folks. Rob Portillo, who is communications director for Congressman Jonathan Jackson, joins us from Atlanta. Rebecca Karmelo is executive vice president, Fair Election Center out of D.C. Tyler McMillan, social justice leader and movement strategist out of D.C. Rebecca, when you look at this protest being launched against McDonald's, you are seeing how different people are moving. Of course, we remember when you had efforts to unionize Starbucks. Then, of course, you have this here. You are seeing different workers in different groups, the type of actions they are taking against various companies. And that's the case with the People's, with this group launching this 1 week boycott.
So I really want us as a Black community to move towards a comprehensive boycott strategy. Just like we have international sanctions and foreign affairs, they are effective, but they're never meant to go on for years at a time. It has to be targeted, it has to be specific, it has to have specific outcome. What's interesting with McDonald's and its appearance to move back from DEI, like I remember all the time in the 90s, the aughts, the 2010s, when McDonald's had 365 Black. And McDonald's spent a lot of time talking about diversity. But what's also interesting in listening to McDonald's statement of saying that it has to keep its practices in line to its bottom line, but also it needs to be inclusive for all. One thing that's interesting is that as we talk about on the show, DEI primarily benefits white women. But when we hear about these DEI pullbacks, it's more of, oh, you can't do things that are too much for Black people, because for some reason, I guess the assumption is it's going to be to the detriment of everyone else. So it's really interesting hearing these corporations talking about they're taking a scale back on DE&I efforts because they want to be inclusive for all. It's almost as if they forgot what the I stands for.
So allow me to, first of all, I think we have to do a couple of things. And this is for the purpose of the audience. There's a difference between who holds DEI jobs and diversity, equity, inclusion programs. Now, even so, we know that 78% of DEI jobs held by white folks. Well, that's corporate leaders picking somebody in a senior position that they're comfortable with. Now, we talk about contracts. We know that when you talk about depending upon the company, depending upon the city, county, state, the numbers vary. Federal government, of the $37 billion DBE program, $37 billion, 78% of those dollars go to white women businesses. But last year under Biden-Harris, there was a record $10 billion. So I don't want us, Robert, to make the mistake, and I've seen and heard this a lot, where folks say, Well, I don't give a damn about DEI without understanding, no, what's all underneath DEI? Do you have business diversity, supplier diversity, what senior level positions? There are a series of things. And so we got to be very careful, again, when we talk about language. And I've heard people, so many people, social media and the places, go, man, damn that, we ain't benefiting from DEI, not understanding that you do have contracts that fall underneath that African Americans have been benefiting from. When you talk about this People's Union, this guy, John Schwartz, what they have been doing is targeting a variety of companies for the last few months. This is a story here in USA Today that talks about that, and it says the organizer of the boycott goes by the one called Jai on Instagram, but his real name is John Schwartz. And he told USA Today he started the bold idea because the time was right and people are frustrated with what he calls corporate greed and other frustrations.
Look, Roland, one of the things I want people to understand, and I've had the privilege of working with Congressman Jonathan Jackson on building the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Caucus in Congress, which is meant to address much of this information. We've allowed the other side to win the information war when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want folks to understand, as much as we hear this social media COINTELPRO programming saying, oh, diversity only helps white women, anyone who didn't have rights in 1776 is covered by diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you were not a straight, white, Anglo-Saxon land-owning male at the moment that the Declaration of Independence was signed, you are diversity in this country. When we're talking about DEI, that means ramps for disabled people to get into buildings. That's diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. When we're talking about veterans having the opportunity to learn how to code, having employment preferences after serving this country, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we're talking about the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, I've trained as a labor and employment lawyer. That goes away because that's part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. When they talk about getting rid of woke programs and woke federal departments, the fact that your boss can't come into your office right now, call you the N-word, and say, I'm firing you because you're black. That is diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you get rid of those protections, then that moves the ball backwards. That pushes us in a direction that we have not gone backwards from in over 50 years. What these people are talking about when they're talking about getting rid of DEI is systematically not chipping away at the civil rights movement as has been done before, putting a piece of dynamite in it. As Elon said, the wholesale deletion of federal agencies. And now that we're looking at them destroying the voting rights, destroying the civil rights, destroying equal opportunity, all in the name of getting rid of woke programs, are we really going to be so fooled by online social media influencers that we are the first generation that they hand the baton to bring black folks to freedom, and we drop the baton and say, I ain't going to do it? And that's where we are at currently. So I want folks to really read up and understand exactly what they mean when they say they're getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Because these corporations, I hope people understand at this point in time, do not care about you. They do not love you. They are here for money. That is the only reason they care about you. And when we are out and we are active and we are protesting, we're showing that we matter, they'll pledge everything. They'll have all black folks in the commercial, all of those things. But when those winds shift as they're shifting right now, they go right back to what's making the money. And when we're talking about all the people who didn't have rights in 1776, we need to be building those alliances across the board. And if it shouldn't just be us protesting, it shouldn't be just us boycotted, we need to have that entire big tent umbrella that they talk about during election season, and they need to be fighting here with us.
And Tyler, look, this thing has now gone and impacted everything. Massive pullback when it came to Black History Month. I remember during Black History Month, there was one speakers bureau that said their bookings were down about 62 to 65%. Then we talk about Black History Month. Now we just saw this with Juneteenth, only been a federal holiday, what now, 2 years. Go to my iPad. This story here says Verizon and Amazon cancel support for Juneteenth celebrations. And the story talks about all of these different companies that pulled out. In Denver, the annual Juneteenth Music Festival was cut from 2 days to one due to, quote, a sharp decline and corporate sponsorships. This thing goes on and on and on. And so what you saw is look at the rise in its financial support for the Juneteenth in the Streets Festival in Santa Clara County, California, and it goes on and on and on. So here's the whole question. Okay, what the hell does that have to do with DEI? So here's my question. Okay, are these companies going to scale back on other holidays? Are they going to who they support? And so many of them are using Donald Trump and their conservatives attacking DEI as a way for them to say, cool, we're now good. We can get rid of all these programs. We don't have to support these initiatives. We don't have to advertise with black-owned media. We don't have to do any of this stuff. If it involves people of color, we can just do whatever the hell we want. That's also a huge part of this pushback from lots of folks.
Yeah, absolutely, Roland. I couldn't agree more with the panelists. You know, the fact that they're pulling away is a clear message of where they stand at. And as we say, you know, equity is not a slogan; it's a standard. And I think, you know, these companies are showing where their standard is. And even as we look at McDonald's in this conversation, you know, where their target audience is particularly to our communities, it isn't just symbolic that they're retreating from their investments, but they're quite frankly signaling that racial equity can be sacrificed. And I think even as we have these conversations around boycotting, whether it's Target or Amazon, we really have to look at our spending dollars and see where, you know, where those investments are going and how we can really control our dollar and control the market.
Yep, indeed. All right, folks, got to go to break. We come back. Man, why are all these people hot and bothered because a Democratic assemblyman won the primary last night for mayor of New York City? He's a socialist. I'm trying to figure out why people are tripping, because don't Republicans call all Democrats socialists? We'll deal with this next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie of A Balanced Life. Think about the men in your life and ask yourself these questions. Who are their male role models? Who can they turn to for advice to learn about what manhood is all about? On our next show, we talk about why male mentoring is so important to men of all ages. Actor Dondre Whitfield leads an all-star cast and panel to answer these and many other probing questions.
A woman can't teach you how to be something that she's not.
That's on the next A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie on Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Marissa Mitchell, a news anchor at Fox 5 DC.
Hey, what's up? It's Sammy Roman, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Earthquake, shocking, stunning, upset, all of these phrases have been thrown around as a result of Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani, who's a member of the New York State Assembly, who claimed victory last night in the Democratic mayoral primary in New York City. He faced a field of 11 candidates, including former New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo. In November, Mamdani will face incumbent Mayor Eric Adams, who is running as an independent, and Republican Curtis Sliwa. Now, Cuomo might also run as an independent if elected in November. Mamdani will be the first Muslim and the first Asian American to serve as mayor of New York City. People are losing their minds. They're like, oh my God, what do we do? What's happening? Joining us right now is Christina Greer, co-host of FAQ NYC. Talk about this here. And she also, of course, is a book author as well. And those books include How to Build a Democracy from Fannie Lou Hamer and Barbara Jordan to Stacey Abrams, plus Black Ethics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. And also co-author of Black Politics and Transition, Immigration, Suburbanization, and Gentrifications. What that means, she got a lot of books, y'all. All right, so let's get to this. Here's what I found. I've just been looking at the tweets today and going, I'm confused why y'all so mad. I saw, let me find it. First of all, Wall Street's been losing their mind. Here were some of the idiots on CNBC who were just, oh my God, what do we do? Listen to this.
Gotham. Have you seen what Batman is up against in Gotham and what the guy running for mayor is up against? That's what it reminds me of. They're taking Wall Streeters and make him walk out onto the ice in the East River as and then they fall through.
Yep.
I mean, there is a class warfare that's going.
So what's happened here, I think,
is the rich type.
There's a division within.
Yeah, what the hell they were talking about? I just don't. They were just sitting here, they dumping them in the water and I mean, that's literally what it sounded like. So, and plus that dude who was talking, a huge Donald Trump MAGA supporter. Here is CNBC host David Faber being extremely petty, extremely ridiculous. So listen to this with his conversation with Jim Cramer. Watch this.
It is not the closing of a steakhouse that David Zaslav likes to, and you like to go to. Well, you and I have had dinner there a few times.
Yes. And you and I are going to recreate that place.
The rent's too high. You know what? The new mayor, potentially, of New York is going to freeze the rents, and everybody eats for free, so they don't have to worry.
Really?
Yeah.
But how about the rich?
No.
Do they get shot?
No, yes. They get taken away.
Are we kulaks?
Yes, they get taken away. We have to go.
In 23?
We have to leave now. But everybody else, there he is. Mamdani.
Maybe he's more moderate
winning
than we
the
think.
Democratic primary for mayor and potentially the successor of Eric Adams. That said, there's still a general election to come here in New York. By the way, of course, we're here, we talk about it, but we are talking about a $2 trillion economy. It's not nothing.
It is a,
he wants to get the rents down. One good way to do it is to stop all business and drive everybody out. That'll bring the rents down.
That's a very good point. Right? Go to Jersey, where I am.
Yeah. All right.
Christina, what the hell? Why are these folk freaking out?
Because it's been a very long time since we've had a candidate who's been able to articulate a vision so concisely about wealth distribution and a more equitable New York City. And so his campaign was very clear about free buses, affordable housing, grocery stores in particular boroughs, because he is an active member of the Democratic Socialist of America. What I think a lot of Democrats underestimated is that there's so many New Yorkers who are struggling. They are willing to take a chance on new ideas. And Cuomo, who many elected officials backed, current elected officials, past elected officials who weren't even in New York City, decided to double down and support Andrew Cuomo because they assumed that he would win. Andrew Cuomo ran a coronation. He did not run a campaign. He said very little. He participated in no forums. He only participated in 2 debates and 1 or 2 interviews, and that's it. Because Andrew Cuomo knows New York State, but he doesn't really know New York City, and he hasn't lived in New York City for several decades. And so Zohran Mamdani had an amazing ground game. He had thousands of volunteers. In many ways, it looked like he was the only person running in the city for several months. And he was able to have a huge groundswell of people who had a vision of a city that they could actually afford. And there are a lot of people who are not just since COVID, but even before COVID have been struggling financially. And he's presenting solutions. I honestly, Roland, I thought that the election would be one of 2 ways. Because there's so much chaos at the top of the government in Washington, D.C. with the Trump administration, I thought that some New Yorkers would want a status quo election, such that when things are uncertain at the top, you just want to sort of have things stay the same at the local level. But Zohran Mamdani awakened something in a lot of voters. That's what I keep hearing from people who supported him and ranked him #1, in the sense that because there is so much chaos and uncertainty at the top of our government, they were willing to take a chance on someone who had bold and new ideas, who said, we actually don't have to live with the status quo. You don't have to vote for someone who's 67 years old, who would have been the oldest New York City mayor in the history of the city, who, has his own corruption probes, who has his own Me Too, several over, almost a dozen women accused him of sexual misconduct. We don't actually have to have elected officials with this amount of baggage. And so it feels very 2008 Barack Obama. There's this inspiring message, there's hope. The difference is Obama wasn't a progressive. Zohran Mamdani is very clear. He is a progressive, and he believes in wealth distribution and moving things around. The city of New York, the mayor, his budget is spoken for pretty much. About 95 to 97% of the New York City budget is ironclad. But that little 3%, that 3 to 5% that the mayor actually has that wiggle room about, Zohran Mamdani wants to actually have new ideas and move it around. I've told him very clearly that I think that a lot of his ideas work under a Biden administration. I'm not convinced that they necessarily work under a Trump administration, but he's clearly making the case each day with thousands of New Yorkers. And by adding in Brad Lander, who's the current comptroller, and for those of you who don't live in New York City, the comptroller is the money man, the guy that sort of handles all of the trillions of dollars that pass through this city. By teaming up with Brad Lander, it does feel like 2008 Obama and Biden, where you have this young upstart who doesn't have a legislative record, but he's not actually running for a legislative position. He's running for an executive position. And he's teaming up with an elder statesman who has been elected citywide, who can serve as an advisor and essentially someone who co-signs and says, I know actually about some of the finances and how to move money around. And I will help this young sort of inspiring candidate be the best mayor that he can be.
So what I did, we had Michael Blake on. I think we had another candidate on. And we were trying to get some other ones on. I didn't spend a lot of time on the show, on the primary, because the bottom line is when you have so many different candidates, look, it becomes chaotic. So typically, I don't spend time on primaries. I just don't, okay? Especially when you're talking about cities, congressional races, state races, things along those lines. But I was following this. And so here's the thing to me, guys, thank you. What are we doing? Thank you. Stick with the two-shot. Here's what I didn't understand. And I'm following this here. He ran a campaign. What he did was he focused like a laser on his message. I saw a lot of the ads, and I was like, damn, that's a damn good ad.
Good ad.
What you just laid out, he really went after young voters. It is a fact that young voters, millennials and Gen Z, are being impacted financially a lot different than baby boomers and Gen X. There's been lots of frustration. And what he did was he talked to people who had checked out of the process. So what he actually did is what many of us have been saying to Democrats: you need to appeal to people who no longer believe in a system. And here is someone who they said, man, I like what he's saying. I like how he's saying. He was extremely locked in on TikTok, on Instagram. He was running a real campaign. So I'm just trying to figure out why all these people are freaking out. Maybe it's because the conventional wisdom is always, oh no, Cuomo, well-known, lots of money. Bloomberg dumped millions into his campaign. Guess what? He's going to cakewalk, as opposed to, no, he got out-campaigned.
Yeah. I mean, Roland, you're so right. I mean, we know that Bloomberg dropped $8.3 million on the books. There's always money off the books, too. DoorDash, Bill Ackman, Bill Ackman, the architect behind getting rid of Claudine Gay at Harvard, who's also the best friend of Whitney Tilson, who's also a candidate for mayor. Zohran Mamdani ran a campaign. He was one of the few candidates that you even knew was running for mayor. And I think youth in this instance does help. His use of Instagram and TikTok and social media and inspiring young people definitely helped. His stance on the Middle East was not with the pack and the herd. In the second debate, when they were all asked where they would travel right after they became mayor, everyone said Israel except for Zohran Mamdani. He said, I'm the mayor of New York. I should probably stay in New York and get my job done. And he was pressed constantly, and sort of given this label that he's an anti-Semite just because he wouldn't say that he traveled to Israel in his first place. So, I think a lot of people really respected the fact that he stood up for some values and principles that he has. And again, younger people skew a lot more progressive on the Middle East questions and the quandaries that are happening there. And then, I think, Roland, when you have someone like Andrew Cuomo who just runs a coronation, and it's, I have the money and I have the big guys and I'll win, without a real message, without connecting to voters. And sadly, Black voters oftentimes can be cheap dates, especially those who are older. Andrew Cuomo promised nothing. He did very well with the Black community because many people love and respect his dad, because he's a known quantity, because there was an assumption that he would win. You see a lot of Black electeds in New York City lining up behind him. But moving forward, I'm always curious as to how four groups will behave. And that's the business community, the real estate community, the labor unions, and the Hasidic community. And depending on how those four groups break, that will give us a clearer indication as to whether or not Zohran Mamdani has a fighting chance on November 4th, or if we will see the business and real estate community circle back around the block and go with Eric Adams, because they invested a lot of money in Eric Adams.
But here's the deal, though. When you're running, you put together coalitions. So this is the New York Times right here. They broke down, first of all, folks, we don't have 100% precincts reporting because you got to remember they're still accounting because of ranked and all that sort of stuff like that.
July 1st, we'll have a proper account.
But here's what's amazing. You listen to all those hacks on CNBC. Oh my God, they're going to be leaving New York City. The neighborhoods with higher incomes, he won. He demolished Cuomo in those neighborhoods. So the folk with money in New York City clearly wasn't scared of the socialists. Middle income residents, 47% was, again, now granted, 49% of the precincts reporting there, 24% with higher income residents, but it was a higher percentage gap between Cuomo and Mamdani on higher income residents. Lower income residents, Cuomo won by 11 points. College graduates, Mamdani beats them by 17 points. White residents, he wins +5. Hispanic residents, he wins +7. Black residents, Cuomo +17. Asian residents, he is +16. More renters, that was a huge issue. He was +14. That is what is called a winning coalition. And again, that's how you win. You don't. What Cuomo tried to do is appeal to Jewish voters, appeal to anti-Muslim voters. He tried to do a foot dance with Trump, not as bad as Eric Adams when it comes to the whole immigration issue. Whereas this guy, if you just look at how it was constructed, it was, and also Bernie Sanders, this is called identity politics, how you target different groups politically. But this is called how you construct a winning campaign. Like, I'm just sitting here watching these people going, what is wrong with y'all?
Right.
Study what actually happened.
But Roland, I mean, this is a classic case of, Andrew Cuomo hasn't lived in New York City since he was 19 years old. So he doesn't really know the city. And so he came in relatively late very late actually to the campaign, and just thought that money would be the thing. And what he didn't realize is A, the city has changed. B, there are a lot of, wealthy New Yorkers. They're not super, super rich. They're not, mega millionaires, but they recognize that making sure that people have a place to live, a place to work. It's that old sort of adage.
Also, because you need workers.
Well, also, Roland,
you need workers.
But also, when we think about the French Revolution, right? If you starve the poor, they have nothing left to eat but the rich. And so I think a lot of people recognize that you can't sort of starve sort of certain classes in this city.
Right.
Because many of them will not be able to leave. And so what happens, right? I mean, many New Yorkers still remember the late 70s and early 80s before David Dinkins was elected, when crime was rampant and you saw, thousands of murders a year. I also think, for me, and this was part of the reason, besides the Me Too stuff, besides the corruption, besides the antiquated messaging of which there was very little, but for me with Andrew Cuomo, the reason why I was against his candidacy is because, Roland, I was convinced that if Andrew Cuomo got into office, and there's still a possibility because he's still on an independent line, that he and Donald Trump have known each other for almost 5 decades now. And they've had their ups and downs. But there clearly has to be a meeting point of the two of them. Obviously, the power dynamic has changed several different times over the course of their relationship. And my biggest fear was that the bargaining chip that Andrew Cuomo would use to get into the good graces of Donald Trump would be Tish James, our attorney general, because of their mutual hatred for this Black woman who has done her job and actually gone after both of these corrupt men. And so that was my biggest concern with having an Andrew Cuomo as the executive in New York City.
I know you got a hard out. I want my panelists to be able to get that question for you. There's some other stuff that I want to talk about. I want to tie in the sister who lost in Buffalo a couple of years ago, but let me go to the panelists first. Tylik, I'll start with you. Your question for Christina.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's amazing of the race. I think, as you all mentioned, he proved what out-organized institutional politics can give you. And if you give him a chance, and progressive politics doesn't have to be something to shy away from, but it's actually something where we demand affordability and democracy that works for us all. What do you think is the ground game going into November's election day against so many odds that stacked against him, and all the messaging from the New York Times to mega millionaires in their messaging against Mamdani?
Well, if he keeps up the pace of the hard work that he's done, I think, he's got a fighting chance. But we have to remember that New York gets this reputation of being a lot more progressive than it actually is.
Right.
We have many different shades of color, blue and purple and red in this city, right? We always just say like, oh, Staten Island's the red part. It's like, no. We know that there are red parts and purple parts of Manhattan, of Brooklyn, definitely the Bronx, and definitely Queens. And so this vision will be stamped as, this socialist vision, which obviously for Latino communities, right, that's been a boogeyman word that has sort of ushered them away from progressive politics. We know that not all Black people and not many Black people are hardcore progressives. Even if some of the policies will most likely benefit us, we are strategic voters, and we have to go to the polls thinking of everybody else, especially how the vast majority of white voters will behave. So oftentimes we might vote for our second or third choice candidate because we'd rather get something than nothing. And so it will be incumbent upon Zohran to present this message to various groups of participatory New Yorkers, and Black New Yorkers overperform at the ballot box. But the electorate November 4th looks very differently than the electorate we saw last night. And so it'll be a larger group, even though our participation rates are pretty abysmal, but it'll be a much more moderate to conservative group that's turning out. And so how he pivots, not necessarily moves, but how he pivots some of the messaging so that people aren't afraid of some of the distributional politics that he's proposing will sort of be the case. And so we also have to remember, again, those four groups that I mentioned: real estate, business, labor, and Hasidic Jewish.
Yep. Well, plus there's going to be a vicious media assault daily against him between now and November 4th. Rebecca.
Thank you for being on the show tonight. So I've been looking at the latest numbers, and it looks like Cuomo almost got the plus 20 over index on Black voters. Mamdani is almost down 20 with Black voters. Eric Adams is going to be running as independent. There's rumors that Cuomo's going to run as independent. I also heard both Don Lemon and Clay Cane earlier today were talking about how Mamdani did not do significant outreach with Black media. Can you talk more or share more why or what Mamdani's efforts towards Black communities in New York has looked like?
Yeah, so I think moving forward, I think we'll probably see much more outreach. But keep in mind, in a primary, you got a limited time and you have to figure out who are going to be your number ones in the ranked choice voting system. And Black people were very clearly with Andrew Cuomo. So that doesn't mean that he's not going to reach out to Black people, but strategically, it didn't make sense for his campaign to try and convert people that were very clear already with a candidate. Now, how he moves forward in the summer will say a lot. I've had issues with the DSA in the past, the Democratic Socialist of America. I've been very clear on my podcast. I don't like the way they talk to Black people. I don't like the way they talk at Black people. And so I've been very clear that at a certain point in time, he's either going to have to pivot away from them or explain to them that you can't go into Black communities and finger wag and tell Black people how they should be voting when we have to be strategic to make sure that our rights are protected. Because don't forget, we're the ones who were on the front lines making sure that everyone has these rights that we so frequently enjoy. So I'm curious to see how he will move forward. I mean, he was on Miro. I know he was on, Breakfast Club. I know that he's not afraid to talk to Black people. That's been very clear. He also walked the length of Manhattan and talked to all different types of New Yorkers. I am curious to see who will be in his volunteer corps. But part of those numbers that you're seeing is because Andrew Cuomo essentially presented it where it's like, I have Black people on lock. So when you have a very limited time to get across the finish line, that's not the time to convert Black people. From June 25th to November 5th or November 4th is the time to convert Black people. But in a primary, when you already know who your universe of voters will be, that wasn't strategically, it made sense. If I were his campaign director, I would probably advise the same thing.
Plus, you looking at, you had Cuomo, you had Adrian Adams, the council president.
You had Zellner Myrie, you had Michael Blake,
Right,
you had Adrian Adams, and you had Cuomo, who's getting all the endorsements from everyone from Al Sharpton to James Clyburn.
Yep. There you
And
go.
nothing of the local elected members of Black elected members of Congress and the State House.
Robert.
I think what's playing out in New York is very much what's playing out in the party writ large nationwide. Kind of this battle between, are we supposed to pick the safe kind of establishment pick or really push forward a strong progressive agenda? What lessons can the rest of the country learn from this race about just, as the young folks say it with your chest? None of these euphemisms, none of this MAGA light that we're hearing from much of the Democratic Party. Like, just look, say what you want. We're going to legalize prostitution. We're legalizing weed. You can what's wrong with just saying the things that people actually agree with? And will Democrats learn that might be the way to win elections, by giving people what they care about?
Right, but here's where it gets complicated. Because our tent is so large, there are several Democrats who do not believe in those issues. And so, but we're still in the same party. So I don't know if this particular election is a mandate. Let's just say, hypothetically, Zohran Mamdani is successful on November 4th. I don't know if this particular election is a mandate for the larger party writ large. Now, there are a lot of Democrats who are saying, why are we just Republican light? Why are we constantly moving to the middle and essentially acting like George H.W. Bush Republican, right? Because the Republican Party has moved so far to the right, we can't even recognize them. But then there are other Democrats who want to be progressive. And then there's a third category where they like to sort of slide across the scale because they recognize to be calcified in one camp or the other doesn't make sense. So it will be interesting to see. I was on a radio show in NPR this morning. Zohran Mamdani was on right before I was, where he said, Michael Bloomberg had some good ideas, which I had a lot of smoke for Michael Bloomberg, the 12 years he was in office, but he actually did have some good ideas. He protected our watershed. We have some of the best water in the city of New York, which keeps us and millions of other people safe. So, the list goes on, but there's some progressives who don't want to hear that at all. And then there are other folks who would say, well, obviously, if you're progressive, you have to be open to working with people who aren't so calcified and rigidly just like you in your ideology and your politics. And that's, I think, the real hard question for Democrats, because we are so diverse under the big tent of the Democratic Party label.
I'm going to go real quick because she has to go. Go.
Sorry, just real quick follow-up. What do you say to young voters when they see the MAGA side of the aisle and they ain't compromising at all? They're not finding middle ground. They're not playing 3D chess. They're just saying what they want to do in it. And we were telling our young people, like, well, we're going to say what we believe in. We just got to paint it up and lie a little bit so people believe you. Like, how can we motivate a generation to get behind us when the other side is coming direct and we're kind of doing the Barry Sanders side to side?
But keep in mind, the MAGA people, they're a small percentage of the Republican Party. It's just they've muted the rest of the party. There are a lot of Republicans who do not believe in the MAGA agenda. They just don't have the backbone to say anything. I think the difference with Democrats is that we actually have very differing ideas at times. My job as a professor is to actually get people inspired to be in politics. And what is really harmful is when you see millionaires and billionaires actually putting in a lot of money in these super PACs to make sure they just try and snuff out an energetic campaign and an energetic candidate before they could even get any traction. And so that's part of the bigger issue where we have a big money problem, just like Republicans, but Democrats have a big money problem where if you're not part of the establishment, we just want to sort of put in a lot of money to make you go away. And that is not helpful for the future of the party.
Well, also, I just want to remind people, and I keep saying this, and it drives me crazy, Christina, and let me get this in before you do go, and that is, and for all the people, y'all, I've been trying. Y'all been telling me not to cuss. I've been trying not to cuss. So I'm going to give y'all a 5-second trigger warning right now, so turn your audio down. So this is for all the people who are saying, oh my God, Dems nationally are in danger because of what happened in New York City. I want to be as clear and concise as I can. Shut the fuck up. Y'all are idiots. a city election in New York City does not dictate everybody around the country. Because politics, and this also goes with Robert just asked Christina, you run also based upon who the voters are. If you are running in a conservative city, you're the black guy who just won in Omaha, who beat the incumbent Republican, he can't run in Omaha, Nebraska like Mamdani can, or like the person in Charlotte or the person in Houston can run. Congresswoman Maxine Waters can run a certain campaign that Sanford Bishop in Georgia can't run. And so it drives me crazy with these national asshole journalists do these, oh my God, the Dems nationally are in trouble. Mamdani is going to represent the entire party. Eric Adams didn't represent the entire damn party. And so it's just dumb to just think that one election, that's somehow going to dictate the rest of the nation because he won the primary. And real quick, because I want you to address, and people understand this here, remember India Walton, the black woman in Buffalo who beat the incumbent mayor in the primary, socialist, and what did Mayor Brown do? Ran as a write-in or independent. A write-in. They put all the money behind him. He beat her in the general, and so, folk, pump your brakes. She won the primary, didn't win the general. Mamdani has won the primary. Don't mean he's going to win the general. It's a lot that's going on, but Christina, it is grating on me. This,
right. Well, we have a long road.
Dictating the whole nation.
Right. We have a long road to November. I think I keep telling people, first of all, we need to see what the numbers look like on July 1st when we have show and tell, to see where Cuomo was, to see what communities supported and did not support him. But there will be a very long campaign, an arduous campaign going into November 4th. And all politics is local, especially New York, because we have, so many people and so much diversity. I mean, also, Roland, I really appreciate you letting me come on to talk about this, because the number of bad takes I've heard today about New York City, because most people, just because you live in New York doesn't mean you know New York City politics. And many people know national politics, but New York City is its own beast. Many people don't know that you can run on multiple party lines, right? Andrew Cuomo ran on the Democratic line in the primary. He also has his, fight and deliver party, right? Mamdani, if he hadn't won, there was a conversation that he might run on the Working Families Party. He might still run on the Working Families Party line in addition to the Democratic Party line. So there are a lot of nuanced conversations that a lot of people don't understand, and we will hopefully have more nuanced conversations moving towards November 4th, so people aren't confused as to why the business community would rally behind Eric Adams. Why would the Hasidic community or labor unions rally behind Eric Adams or not, right? And so there it is. I've got a boogie, but I appreciate it.
I got you. Christina, we'll have you back. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, talk soon.
Gonna go to a break. We're gonna come back, talk more about this and unpack this a little bit more so people can have a better understanding. Don't forget, support the work that we do. Folks, again, first of all, ain't nobody else in black-owned media having this conversation because they don't have any shows. I'm just being straight up. Okay? So they don't even exist. All right? Rebecca about to follow her chair laughing. Come on, Anthony, you miss it. Anthony, you got to be quicker than that. Come on, hit it. But it's true. It's true. Ain't nobody else they ain't doing nothing. Okay? Out of all the black cable networks, no news shows. BT got a monthly show, and that might get cut with the announcement of layoffs today. But the other digital folks, they ain't got nothing. Griot, Essen, everything, Black Enterprise, nope. Not all of them. So we are speaking to the issues that matter, giving you depth and context and nuance that they're not going to talk about. So join our Bring the Funk Fan Club. Cash App, you can utilize the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. If you're listening, just simply go to blackstarnetwork.com. Also, PayPal, R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo, RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And of course, send your check and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Back in a moment.
This week on The Other Side of Change, Juneteenth.
It's a day about blackness. It's a day about freedom. It's also a day about talking about justice delayed. And we are not in the business of justice being denied to us. So stick around. We're going to talk all about the case for reparations.
The push for reparations is not just an economic project, it's a moral project. So if we want to live up to the ideals of this foundation, then reparations has to be something that we pursue.
Only on The Other Side of Change on the Black Star Network.
What's good, y'all? This is Doug E. Fresh, and you're watching my brother Roland Martin Unfiltered as we go a little something like this. Hit it. It's real.
Well, incumbent New York City Mayor Eric Adams is doing all he can to appeal to white conservatives. Expect to see more of this. He was on Fox and Friends this morning as they were operating as campaign surrogates for Eric Adams. Listen to this.
Mr. Mayor, it's not just defund the police. This candidate, Democratic Socialist, he wants to freeze the rent. He wants city-run grocery stores, social workers to replace the police because that's going to help. He wants $60 billion of debt fund for affordable housing. He wants free buses, no cost for childcare, baby baskets for newborn, and a $30 minimum wage. How can someone vote for this?
He's a snake oil salesman.
Mm-hmm.
He will say and do anything to get elected. Think about this for a moment. He wants to raise 1%. He wants to raise tax on 1% of New Yorkers' high-income earners. As the mayor, you don't have the authority to do that. You know who has the authority to do that? An assemblyman, which he is. He wants to do free buses. He could have done it at assemblyman. He doesn't understand the power of government and how you must making sure you improve your economy, raise the standard of living, and this is what we've done in the city. And I'm looking forward to being on the campaign trail and showing New Yorkers we can't go backwards. And New Yorkers never surrender or quit. I'm never going to quit for the city that I love.
That is so interesting. You're in the position, so you know you don't have the authority to do that. Yet he's running on all these promises he's not going to be able to fulfill. And
Here's, to me, what I find to be interesting. Lawrence B. Jones, who is absolutely not one of the brightest bulb in a dark room, okay? He goes, matter of fact, I just want to listen to this again, y'all. Listen to this.
Mr. Mayor, it's not just defund the police. This candidate, Democratic Socialist, he wants to freeze the rent. He wants city-run grocery stores, social workers to replace the police because that's going to help. He wants $60 billion of debt fund for affordable housing. He wants free buses, no cost for childcare, baby baskets for newborn, and a $30 minimum wage. How can someone vote for this?
How about they did? See, this is what I find to be absolutely stupid. All of these people are angry and upset because people actually voted. So let me just remind you how this works. You announce you run for office. You declare your candidacy. You launch it. You campaign. Election day, people vote. So you're mad they actually voted in the primary. Well, guess what? People then are going to have an opportunity to vote in the general election in November 4th. I can't stand these MAGA people. But guess what? They voted. Other people sat on the couch, they didn't vote. Let me explain to y'all how this works. If you get more votes than the other person, you win. And if that person's people vote and your people don't, then you don't have a chance at winning. The crazy thing to me, Rebecca, they're mad that people voted the way they wanted to vote. I don't live in New York City. I pop in, I pop out. I got no interest in living in New York City. Too many rats, too much trash. It ain't me. Also, I like grass. I ain't trying to see all that concrete, okay? That's just me, all right? But they voted. So clearly there was something a lot of people liked about Mamdani.
For anyone in the audience, if you've been to New York City lately, or even been to New York City in the last 20 years, it's expensive. And people who live in New York, there's a few things that they want. They want affordable housing. They want affordable childcare. They want affordable transportation. They want to actually be able to work and live within an hour of where they work and live instead of having hours-long commute because they can't afford to live in the city in which they work. I mean, that's the Working Families Party platform. Shout out to my friend Maurice Mitchell. Working Families Party, they had a clean slate last night, all up and down New York State. And so this really shows that Eric Adams is extremely out of touch. Maybe it's because he's really been living in New Jersey, which came out when he ran the first time, is that people want to actually afford to live in New York. When we look at certain cities like San Francisco and see that a lot of people have had to flee the city because they can no longer afford it, you know, New York is also one of those cities that's teetering there. And, you know, a lot of people who are in New York City, they don't want to be displaced because we remember, what was it, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there was the Black guy who ran on the platform of the rent is too damn high.
Yep.
I think that was the party that he ran on, that he was a part of. It's expensive. There should be nowhere in the United States where people are going hungry, they can't find a place to live, they can't have affordable childcare, they can't afford to live. That should not be America. But what we're seeing right now, that has become America. So even for Eric Adams and Fox and Friends to push back on the quote unquote socialist agenda, it's because capitalism really isn't working for a lot of people in this country. It's becoming the American nightmare, not the American dream.
You know, Tom Suozzi, congressman, put this tweet out. I had to respond. I had serious concerns about Assemblyman Mamdani before yesterday, and that is one of the reasons I endorsed his opponent. Those concerns remain. And I went, and the voters voted.
Exactly, Roland. And I think it reveals something deeper about how power reacts when it's no longer in control. As you said, New York City voters, especially young, working class, and communities of color, they chose their candidate who reflected their realities, which was housing justice, transit equity, anti-policing platforms. We talk about how ICE is invading the city. But when those candidates win, as we see here clearly, political establishments and media don't call it democracy. They call it chaos. And I think what we saw here was people they voted for themselves, and that's what democracy looks like. Democracy looks like when people go out and vote their interests. And the outrage isn't about voter turnout or misinformation. It's really about finally showing up and shifting the narrative, and that's exactly what the candidate did in yesterday's election. So,
Robert, Larry Summers, who was the former president of Harvard, he worked for Obama, one of his over economic advisors, whatever the hell he did. Okay, I don't know what the hell he did. So this was his tweet. I am profoundly alarmed about the future of the DNC and the country by yesterday's New York City anointment of a candidate who failed to disavow, quote, a globalized the intifada slogan and advocated Trotskyite economic policies. I fear it is evidence that our party is following the most problematic aspects of Britain's Labour Party. It didn't work there and it won't work here. Harvard and other universities' moral weakness after October 7th in condoning hateful, anti-Israeli, and even anti-Semitic rhetoric and activity opened the Overton window in ways that contributed to yesterday's outcome. I hope candidate Mamdani, who showed great ability to learn and adapt during this campaign, will continue to evolve in ways that provide much needed reassurance to people committed to a free from prejudice market economy as an American ideal. An important task for Mamdani now is to provide reassurance that his moral energy and formidable political skills can be productively directed for the city of New York at this difficult moment. What a bullshit ass statement. First of all, like I said, Robert, him winning a primary ain't got a damn thing to do with the DNC. It ain't got a damn thing to do with anybody else running anywhere in the country. Again, just as a reminder to the people who forgot, this sister here, socialist, India Walton, she won the primary in Buffalo. The world didn't end. They targeted her, ran against her. She lost in the general. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Mamdani. He may win in November. And if he does, that means the voters actually chose him. So Larry Summers, go kick rocks.
Look, this is the empire striking back, and we see this every time there's these insurgent candidates. The establishment of both parties, actually, but we're talking about the Democrats right now. The establishment decides, well, this might be a little bit too hot water for the rest of us. So we saw this with Cori Bush. We saw this with Jamal Bowman. We saw this with Nina Turner. We see this in election after election. They always say that we want the candidate of hope and change. What they really are talking about is just the status quo that benefits our rich people the most. And until we can get out of that, we are losing an entire generation. You know this as well as I do. Nearly to a person, the black MAGAs that you see today, if you picture them in college, if you find a picture of them from 2007, 2008, they have Obama shirts on. You know, they were at the marches, they were at the rallies, they were the hope and change generation. And when when they did not see that hope, they did not see that change, they became disillusioned with politics. And then they started looking for somebody who was actually going to shake up the two-party system, and they settled on Trump. Do they agree with him on policy? He ain't got no damn policy. There's nothing to agree with. And Democrats have to learn you can't keep cutting off the next generation to support the status quo as it exists right now, because you're going to lose in the marketplace of ideas. I'm glad that Larry Summers mentioned the Labour Party in Europe or in Great Britain, because after 14 years of Tory rule, we saw Labour under Keir Starmer take over on a progressive message. It wasn't just Labour, it was Labour, the Lib Dems, the Greens. They all took party above the Tories because they had to splinter into Reform UK because their conservative movement had their own MAGA movement inside of it. The point being that if you look at that European corollary to American politics, it tells us we need to be bolder, we need to be stronger, that in the face of fascism, as we're seeing in France and in Italy and in Belarus around the continent, it takes strong candidates willing to stand up for real values. And that's what this election is telling us. We need people who actually have a voice and who aren't afraid of the money.
Again, if you don't like them, try to beat them. That's called democracy. Going to a break. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. A very different take on Juneteenth with the one and only Dr. Sunyata Ahmed. We'll explore the amazing foods, remedies, and rituals that are a part of our history and the Juneteenth holiday.
So it's our responsibility to return the healthier version to our folks instead of just the red liqueurs marketed to us, the red sodas and the other things. I mean, why does the Kool-Aid man have to sound like Louis Armstrong? He's like, oh yeah!
Yeah, right. An enlightening and tasty hour of the Black Table, only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, my name is Freddie Ricks. I'm from Houston, Texas.
My name is Sharon Williams. I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Right now, I'm rolling with Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
Folks, a couple weeks ago, we had the note. Folks, A couple weeks ago, at the No Kings protest took place in the country. Others are being planned right now. At the top of the show, we talked about the boycott happened with McDonald's. There's a history of protests in America. It's real. My next guest has a new book out that lays all of this out. And so let's go. Gloria Brown, she's the author of A Protest History of the United States. She joins us right. Guys, can y'all please show the graphic? I need to see her book. Show the graphic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Here we go. So, author of A Protest History of the United States. Gloria, thanks for joining us. First and foremost, why'd you want to do this?
Because there have been so many people who had given up their lives and livelihoods through protests, and they do all the sacrificing, and we take advantage of what they've done, and then people forget all about them. And also, I wanted the new generations of protesters to learn the strategies and what went into making movements happen, as opposed to believing that protest was ineffective and they just given it up and only have like these, emotional protests, and it's over and say, oh, it didn't work because I didn't see change happen within 24 hours.
I was reading this one story. This was after the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd. And this one brother was like, well, man, politics ain't nothing. I ain't voting, but I'm going to protest. And I'm like, protesting and not voting, your ass just going for a walk.
There are people saying, I'm going to protest, but they don't really understand that there is a very strong history of protest. And I always like to say the 8-hour work day came through protests. So what the laws are on the books, the Constitution ratified in 1789, the Bill of Rights in 1791, the 14th Amendment in 1868, those are words. What made it happen was litigation, legislation, and protest, or it would still just be nice words on paper. So people need to know that in order to vote, you're voting for something. Somebody's going to create laws. What do those laws mean if they don't have a reality behind them? The protest makes those laws into a reality to fit our lives.
I think as you lay out in the book, when you take the time to understand protest, it wasn't about a singular event. There was a strategy. And that's the thing that drives me crazy when I see people and they say, hey, we're having a protest. And I'm like, okay, why? What's the purpose? What's the plan of action? What are you going to protest this Saturday? What are you going to do on Monday? That's what drives me crazy.
And it's because it doesn't give the forefathers and mothers of protest any credit for all that went into it. I had the chance to go to Selma about a month or so ago. That's part of their 60th anniversary of the March Across the Edmund Pettus Bridge for voting rights. Those elders were high school students who took classes every week on nonviolent protests and philosophy and practice and tactics, who was going to get arrested, who was going to bail them out. This wasn't just a one and done. They did this for weeks over time while they were in school. So we need to understand it. The TV shows show one protest and then everything changes, when it took years for us to get voting rights.
Absolutely. And so explain, folk, that there's also an art to protesting. There's a process here. It ain't just, hey, let's just roll out there.
Some protests, for example, when George Floyd was murdered, there is an emotional impulse to go out and get that frustration out of you. But protests over time, if we look at it, whether or not it's protests for the labor movements, for women's rights, for racial justice, it's a strategy in which people decide where they're going to protest, how long they're going to protest, and then, like you said, what is the message? Because you're trying to persuade thought. You're just not trying to have an action. The action is supposed to lead to people being persuaded to your side. And that's why Martin Luther King was such a magical person when it came to protest. He knew how to use the media. He knew how to have strategies. And if one strategy didn't work, you had to tweak it for another one. There was so much more that went into it than people are seeing just watching these clips on television.
Go to my panel. Robert, you're first.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for such an outstanding work. And as someone who's been active in the movement since I was about 17 years old, I think you're spot on when you talk about the way we educate people about the civil rights movement in particular, and the workers' rights movement, etc. I always said this thing on my radio show that it's almost like we teach it as a fairy tale, that one day Abraham Lincoln woke up and he decided to have lunch with Martin Luther King, and then they got on the Underground Railroad and rode to Washington, D.C. to do the I Have a Dream speech. And then Barack Obama came out and they all shook hands and racism was over. That's how they teach Black history in America. Can you really talk about the need for us to educate this next generation on the levels of work that went into planning Selma, that went into planning the Montgomery bus boycott, that went into planning the first march on Washington, etc., so that they will see that this is not a quick, I'm going to send out one tweet, I'm going to change my profile picture to Black in solidarity, I'm not going to go to Target this weekend, but it has to be part of a sustained movement.
And you're so right. It has to be part of a sustained movement, but there also has to be a vision for where people want to go. It's not just protesting against something, we're also moving towards something. So they're protesting against racism or protesting for voting rights. And what gets lost, I think, is that people are feeling this emotional need to protest against the regime that's in place right now in the White House. But what are we protesting for? What's the vision going forward? And whether or not it's the labor movement, protesting for the 8-hour work week, protesting for better wages, protesting for the a union at Amazon plants. So people have to protest for something as well as thinking they have to protest against. And I think the strategy in protesting for means that you have to have a message. You have to think about who's good at what. Not everybody is going to be a leader. You have to have a lot of foot soldiers. How are you going to do this? I tell people don't protest after sundown because that's when bad things happen. So that means you're planning a time for the protest. You're planning where you're going to protest, how long you're going to do it, and then having sit-ins. Why not use the sit-in? That hasn't been used in a long time. And I say, well, maybe sit in at Trader Joe's, sit in at these places in which protests are supposed to disrupt and inform and move towards something. So there were so many things that were going on. And as you said, the way they write the story today and have the movie version of it, people are wondering if they protest once, why isn't change happening overnight?
Rebecca.
Thank you. I'm concerned that 47 is going to incite social unrest, especially as we start to go into the heat and the height of summer. What are ways in which our community can stay safe if they choose to exercise their right to protest?
I'm glad you asked that. These are all brilliant questions. One of the things that happened after Kamala Harris had her election stolen, because I still believe there was voter suppression there that was not investigated, was that the onslaught of this regime was to instigate, was to have the shock and awe of all of this legislation through executive orders, and with the sense from the first term that they were going to use the National Guard. And I told people months ago he was going to use the National Guard, but in his first term, he said he was going to use it in South Chicago, the South Side of Chicago, against us, because Black people are the target. It just so happened that you had that uprising that took place in LA. That was not as large as it was made to seem, but you know, all that you saw that happened in LA, I think is supposed to be targeted toward us. So my main concern becomes, as we look at the summer, people are saying, I'm tired, I don't want to protest. If we protest, that we're going to be injured. So we have to be very careful that when we rise up in ways that are structured so that it's not an instigation, but they're going to use anything as an instigation. I'm telling you that right now. And that's why the planning for it has to be is during the day, that people have the telephone number of attorneys, that the attorneys are not at the protests, that if we're going to be arrested, there's a plan to how we're going to use the arrest. And nonviolent philosophy has to be something that people want to do, not something we're just supposed to do because we're Black. But I think if we're not part of the protest, as they say, if you're not at the dinner table, you're probably on the menu. And the protests I've been to, our issues are not there at all. And I'll give you this example. When that helicopter and the plane collided in Washington, D.C., and he said it was DEI, no one stood up for us. And that's why I said I've got to be a part of a protest on President's Day, because with other people from New York City, New Jersey, to say, you've got to do something. We've got to not be erased, because we're being erased right now. So it's difficult to balance out. Being quiet means that we get erased. How do we get our voices out there and stay safe? That's why I said it has to be during the day. It has to be much more planning than you saw in Los Angeles. That was just like this emotional outburst. And we have to have some leadership in this planning. And young people today don't want leaders. They want to do things that leaderlessly. I think we're going to have our message very clear, and we're going to have allies there with us.
But on that particular point there, I think it's critically important. And I get this idea of leaderless protesting, but I'm sorry. Somebody has to lead. So you have to have a hierarchy. You have to be able to give orders. And I think that was one of the problems with Occupy Wall Street. We saw this as well with, the implosion of, frankly, Black Voters Matter, and they're still trying to, get that back. I get you want to have consensus, but at the end of the day, you're going to need some folk who are literally in charge, because somebody got to make decisions.
You're so right. And in my book, Protest History of the United States, I go from the indigenous resistance to European invaders, to slave uprisings and the making of unions, all the way to women's rights and then climate change. And each one of those struggles within it, they were done differently. The different leaders had different personality types. And I try to, as best I can, talk about the personality types of the Native American chiefs who were trying to negotiate, or when they did have to attack, and the different types of uprisings between Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner. But people have different personalities. But once again, there was some leader who was saying, this is why we're doing it. And in order to get the message out, somebody has to say what the message is. And you can have different ways of going toward that vision of what we want in the future. But people have to know what the vision is, and that means a clear message. And that's why I said Martin Luther King and others were very, very good, adept at getting that message out.
Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. I had the honor of helping organize two March on Washington. So protests, and they're at the heart of my love language. So, and I always tell other young people, a protest without strategy is just a gathering. And as you said, Uncle Roland, if you got no plan, you just out there for a walk. And I believe that your book, reminds us of the rights that, they were fought for, they weren't handed down. And given today's climate, as mentioned by my fellow panelists, what lessons from historical movements should young activists keep in mind as they continue to fight for justice?
I think one thing to keep in mind, and thank you for that question, is that in my book, A Protest History of the United States, you get to see how there could be these long-term strategies. For example, the time between 1955 and 1965, as there was a fight for desegregation and for voting rights, that was 10 years, different leaders coming to the fore with different things, but they had the vision of desegregation. They had the vision of racial pride and uprisings, of uplift. And so there were different strategies involved. We know there were major differences between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, but they were both looking at how do we lift our people? How do we lift our communities? And so I would say you don't have to have the same strategy. You don't have to walk in lockstep, but the major thing is vision. In order for us to have unions today, there were struggles around unions. People lost their lives trying to create unions. And for me, labor organization is protesting against the way workers are being treated. It wasn't just one way in which people tried to create a union, but they had that as the vision, and different people worked toward that in different ways and strategies, and that's how you got to that vision. So people need to understand, as young folks, don't expect 100%, even 80% of people. It's usually about 10 to 20% of people are going to participate in any type of movement, and yet they are going to benefit from your struggle. So get over that. It hurts your feelings, but that's how it is. People are going to question your sincerity. They're going to question whether or not you know what you're doing. The leader doesn't necessarily have to be the best community organizer. There's got to be some song that brings people together. There must be a strong voice. There are so many different ways in which talents need to be distribute it so that you have a movement. It can't just be one person. We look at Martin Luther King, but there were many, many people who were involved in that movement to go forward. So different strategies, different personalities, a vision, and understanding the distribution of work so that you don't mind being a foot soldier. Everybody can't be the chief. Some people just have to be foot soldiers in this. So when you think about all of that and know that's not going to happen all at once, there are many things that may go forward, but it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. 2 steps forward, and always look for the 1 step back. And so you have your plan to when things go backwards, how to then pivot and go forward again.
All right, folks, the book is A Protest History of the United States. Gloria Brown is the author. Gloria, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Good luck with the book.
Thank you, sir.
All right, folks, as a reminder, Monday we'll be broadcasting live 11 a.m. from the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court when Bishop William Barber of the Poor People's Campaign, Repairs of the Breach, will hold their Moral Mondays in D.C. at the Capitol. They will have moral witnesses united against an immoral budget. They'll be gathering at 9 a.m. at Lutheran Church of the Reformation, and then they're going to be marching to the Supreme Court, holding the news conference there. They, of course, you see right here, the clergy is being asked to wear full vestments of their faith tradition. And again, it begins all at 11 a.m. We're going to be live on Monday morning, so y'all stay tuned right here to the Black Star Network. All right, got to go to break. We come back. We're going to talk about a website that is a shopping place for a lot of these black companies that have products in Target that are being impacted by the boycott. We'll talk to the founder of that next. Folks, don't forget to support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to do the work that we do. If you want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. If you're listening, go to Roland Martin Unfiltered or the BlackStarNetwork.com. If you want to send a check or money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
If we don't stand up for Medicaid now, in spite of my honorable military service, the Senate will kill my child.
I want the people that are trying to take this away from us to put yourself in our seats.
Congress people, you got free health care paid for by the people. And then you don't want the people to have the same thing you have. That is sick, and we must challenge it.
This bill will deny millions of people the health care that they need.
This is policy violence.
And we won't be silent anymore.
This week on The Other Side of Change, Juneteenth.
It's a day about blackness. It's a day about freedom. It's also a day about talking about justice delayed. And we are not in the business of justice being denied to us. So stick around, and we're going to talk all about the case for reparations.
The push for reparations is not just an economic project, it's a moral project. So if we want to live up to the ideals of this foundation, then reparations has to be something that we pursue.
Only on The Other Side of Change on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr, a very different take on Juneteenth with the one and only Dr. Sunjata Ahmed. We'll explore the amazing foods, remedies, and rituals that are a part of our history and the Juneteenth holiday.
So it's our responsibility to return the healthier version to our folks instead of just the red liqueurs marketed to us, the red sodas and the other things. I mean, why does the Kool-Aid man have to sound like Louis Armstrong? He's like, oh yeah!
Oh, yeah, right. An enlightening and tasty hour of the Black Table, only on the Black Star Network.
My name is Lena Charles, and I'm from Opelousas, Louisiana. Yes, that is Zydeco capital of the world.
My name is Margaret Chappelle. I'm from Dallas, Texas, representing the Urban Trivia Game.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you watch.
Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Folks, the boycott against Target continues, but that is going to obviously impact the black-owned businesses with products in Target. Well, Sisters Media has come up with an idea to help folks navigate that and help those businesses. They've launched Shop Red Bag. Again, Shop Red Bag. It is a one-stop shop for Americans who are boycotting Target and Walmart. Candy Carter, CEO of Sisters, joins us right now. Candy, glad to have you here. So how did you come up with this idea? We know why, but what caused you to say, you know what, we got to do this?
Well, what's interesting is my company, what I do is I do online stores for big media partners. And when I was dealing with a bunch of the brands that we work with, I saw the Black-owned brands struggling. I mean, they were just like, you know, there was outrage online. Everybody saw everything on social media that was happening. And I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to be in these streets protesting, right? Like, that's just not my thing. But I actually have the keys to this kingdom. I know how to set up a store. I've got hundreds of brands that I already work with. And we decided to do that. So we sent out a big alert to all of our brands. We searched for brands who either left Target or were dumped from Target and other places. And literally within a week, 80 brands were like, yes, sign us up. And, you know, we're a small company, right? But it was just like, I was like, we have to do this. Like, I'm just one of those people, I can't sit on the sidelines and just not do something, right? And so that's where shopredbag.com started.
And you said 80 brands aligned, and I take it they are all different types.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, our goal is we have a lot of Black-owned brands. I think there's 31 pages of Black-owned brands in the store. And so if you go to the store, what's really cool is I said to every brand, this is a movement. It's not a store. It's a movement. And you guys are talking about every headline, something's being erased. Our history is being erased. This person's being let go. All the rollbacks, all the things. But we're not victims, right? So like when you talk about the power of protest, right? And in the first quarter earnings for Target, they're like, look, we got hit hard by protest. It works. But to your point earlier, what happens next? And this is the next. I mean, honestly, to be honest with you, there was a guy on social media. He was literally standing in Target. I wish I could find that video. He was like, what am I supposed to do? Y'all want me to boycott. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to buy my deodorant, my this, my that? And that's what really inspired me to do it. And so we have brands that fall under the DEI umbrella, Black-owned brands, women-owned brands, disability, LGBTQ+. And, you know, those brands have come together. We have toilet paper, cleaning supplies, you know, all the things. And every day we're adding more brands. I would say there's probably 30 or 40 brands still in the queue that we're getting into the store. So it's an alternative. Right? We have to change the way we shop if we want our money to matter and if we want to make a difference with our wallet, because we can.
Indeed. Questions from the panel. Rebecca, you first.
Thank you so much for doing this. I have been frustrated by some of the folks who, you know, they do have their multiple lines in Target. And I understand that, especially for those who have licensed their image and likeness with the Target, that this is difficult. But I want to hear more of what is the percentage of folks who currently have lines still active in Target versus your overall, I guess, manufacturer creators or small businesses that you feature on your platform?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number we have. So if you go on the platform, you can shop brands that have been impacted by the DEI rollbacks. So if you click on that, you can see all the brands in there that have been impacted by it. You can shop Black-owned brands. You can shop veteran-owned brands. You can shop generally. But what's interesting is every single founder has done a video in the store because this is a movement. So if you go on the store, you can literally click on the videos and listen to the founders talk about their, you know, their journey, how the DEI rollbacks have impacted them. I think what people don't think about, and this is what a lot of founders told me, it's not just not having shelf space. There's no longer programs to teach people how to get into retail. There were people who had started deals or were promised entry into large retailers and it just ghosted, went away, right? And then there's the folks that were in retail, spending all this money to promote their brands, and they weren't being promoted. That's a whole nother story. So I just think in the next, like in these times, right, we have an opportunity, especially Black folks, with the amount of money that we spend, we can see that boycotting stores is hurting them. So where does all that money go, right? That's what Shop Red Bag is. It's like, make a commitment to make your dollar matter. Your wallet is your weapon. If you're not the person who's going to boycott, if you're not the person marching down the street, this is a way that every single time you spend money, you can uplift the community. We all need to grow. We all need our economy to grow during this time. And we have nothing but opportunity.
Tyler.
Yeah, thank you so much. I like that you said everybody has their role. Always say everybody can't bring the potato salad to the cookout.
That's
You got to know what your role is. So thank you for highlighting that. My question would be, what advice would you give to young Black creatives building businesses rooted in purpose, but just not for profit? What would your advice be for them?
Well, it's interesting because do it. Just do it. Like, I'm just a doer, right? I have a son with special needs. 6 years ago, I'm like, he has no friends. So I started a foundation, and it's called We've Got Friends. And now we serve hundreds of families throughout New Jersey. I'm just a mom. I'm just a business person. And it's like, if you have an idea, do it. I always tell young people who work for me, like, we're in meetings, and I'm like, listen, I don't care who the idea comes from. If it's good, we're doing it. So just do it. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it really isn't. Now, let's just break it down. Do one thing every day. You know, I always say too, let your day job finance your dreams. Don't quit your job, but just do one thing every day towards that thing that you do and see if it works. You know, but I think a lot of people get paralyzed by, you know, the idea of it, the fear of it, and then they just never try it. But you'd be surprised how simple things can be if you take all of that fear away and just go, okay, what's the one thing I can do today?
And on that point, one thing Reverend Jackson would always say is that we can't just boycott, we have to boycott also. Meaning that we have to invest in buying things in our own community. And what you're doing is outstanding around that. And this really dovetails into the previous conversation when we were talking about this history of protest and this history of Black activism, because what many people forget is that during the Montgomery bus boycott, people didn't just not ride the bus. They were paying their friends and neighbors and church fans and community people to get them back and forth. When we say we're not going to your lunch counter, we didn't just starve. We were going to Big Mama's lunch counter. You put money in her pocket. How can we get the influencer economy to understand that if we are all putting our creative minds together and our creative outlets together, then we can go. If Black folks had gotten behind Roland 7 years ago, when he got started on this, as opposed to diving in now, then this would be rivaling any of the big networks. So what do we have to do to kind of break through that almost post-traumatic slave syndrome where people think, well, it's not given to me by a white hand, then I shouldn't want it?
You know what's so funny? Roland is the best example because I'm like, you own the Black audience in news in America. You own it. To your point earlier, nobody else is doing it. So if millions of people can follow Roland, right, on this network, then millions of people can shop at Shop Red Bag and stay out of. Here's my thing. If you knew somebody didn't like you, right, didn't want you in their circle, no, you wouldn't be jumping out the bed to run over to their house. Think about how hard Americans work for their money, right? We got headaches, we're working weekends, we're so tired, we can't do anything. And you really want to spend that hard-earned dollar with people who don't care about you? It's just mind-boggling, right? And so, you know, we're actually going to New York tomorrow to talk to young people, to really just talk to people about what matters to you, right? And I think now more than ever, I think people are really assessing, like, how important is it for me to spend my dollars with people who actually care about me, who actually believe in what I stand for, right? Because I don't think we can just frivolously throw our money around anymore. I don't think it's fair to us. It's not going to be helpful to us. And the only way, to your point, that we can grow really over the next 4 years is to do it together. And we just have to come together.
Yeah, and coming together also means being consistent. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, on March 4th, when we did the State of Our Union coverage, we had 250,000 people watching us live.
It was amazing.
250,000 watching live. Well, if I look right now, you know, we're sitting there, we've had almost 4,000 tonight, but if we're hitting 200,000 every night, we literally are rivaling all the cable networks. We're rivaling those shows. And what then happens when those folks, and so when they, to your point, learn about Shop Redbag, learn about shopblackstarnetwork.com, learn about these things, now they are buying products at a faster rate. And so what I keep saying is, and you know, in one of our promos, Jeff Carr says, bring your eyeballs home. We have to understand, wherever our black eyeballs go, our money follows.
That's right. That is absolutely right. And so, you know, for shopredbag.com, we are adding brands every day. We have a section at the bottom. If there's a brand that you love, tell us about it. We'll put them in the store. You know, we're adding in like 30 SKUs of like shoe racks and, you know, things for to strain your vegetables, like all the things, right? And so keep checking in. We're doing all kinds of things, but the idea is this is an alternative, right? And everybody, the woman who had the book, it was such a great point. Like, you just go out there and protest, and literally everybody was like, so what are we supposed to do now? Like, what are we supposed to do? You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm like, all right, let me be part of the solution. I'm not going to get on social media and just complain. I'm just going to do something. And so now we have all of these brands and more brands coming in. And they're all, and like I said, if you listen to these guys in the video, they're passionate. You know, they're like, listen, the DEI rollbacks are not going to get us down. It's not going to set us back. They are so positive and so ready to say, let's do it together. So they're inspiring. The brands are so inspiring, and they're all excited to be in this kind of collective, in this movement together, so that we can show that we can actually lift these brands up. We can do it.
All right, tell them again where to go.
shopredbag.com.
All right, then. Candy, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
You. All right.
All right, then. So, folks, and don't forget, we also have, you can go to shopredbag.com. You also have black products that are on shopblackstarnetwork.com. And so you heard Kane just talking about the toilet paper. Well, you see it right here. You see, that's right, a black-owned toilet paper company, tissue as well. And of course, barbecue sauces, you've got popcorn, you've got a bunch of different products, coffee, you name it, it's on there. So folks, please go to shopblackstarnetwork.com as well. All right, that's it for us. Some stuff I didn't get to, we'll get to tomorrow. Let me thank Tyler, let me thank Rebecca, let me thank Robert being on today's show. I really appreciate y'all being on the panel. Thank you so very much. And folks, don't forget, if you want to continue to support the work that we do, because we are building, we are doing more. We shot a business pilot last month, and we're working on that and checking it out. And then one of the things that we're also looking at doing is a health show as well. So it's a lot of stuff that we got going that we want you to support, and there are things that we want to do more. But the reality is, you cannot do more. You cannot do more unless you have the resources to do so. And so that means you. And listen, we've had tremendous support from our fans since we launched this show on September 4th, 2018. And so we want you to continue to be able to support us. So if you want to join our Bring the Funk fan club, the goal is very simple: to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. And if you can't do that, we totally understand. You can, of course, give less. If you can give more, that'll be absolutely great. Matter of fact, I had a woman who sent me an email today. I'll go ahead and read it. Got a little time here, so let me pull this up. Let's see here. Christine Edwards said, I'm trying, so first of all, Christine Edwards supporting us So she hit me regarding Cash App. This is what she said. My name is Christine Edwards. I am a small business owner based in Charleston, West Virginia. I was listening to your program and heard you talk about the National Baptist Convention. Roland, what a damn shame. Listen, I will keep this short. You have the platform to call them out and tell them to give that money back. Peanuts, not $10 to each church. What a darn shame. I'm giving $100 on your platform and we'll be giving more in the future. Keep up the good work. Thank you for what you are doing for our community. Blessings to you and your family. And so we certainly appreciate her support. Again, it's a lot of stuff that we want to do, things that we want to cover. Listen, we're going to be out there broadcasting on Monday. I'm going to show it to you again. Of course, Bishop William Barber and the repairs of the breach. They're going to be out there. Moral Mondays in D.C. Again, we're going to be there broadcasting live on Monday, 11 a.m. And guess what? That takes resources. And so, if you want to join our Bring the Funk fan club, you want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. Cash App changed their rules, cancel our accounts. So this is how you can support us right here using the Stripe QR code for Cash App. You can see your check and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle. Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You, of course, also can get my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Get the audio version I read on Audible. Also, get our Roland Martin Unfiltered Black Star Network swag by going to rolandmartin.creator-spring.com. If you have ordered something, you have not gotten it, please let us know. Send us an email and we will assist you in that. Let's see here. Also, again, it's shopblackstarnetwork.com. Go there to get our black-owned products, shopblackstarnetwork.com. And, of course, support Fanbase. Download the app. And if you want to invest in their Series A fundraise, get more information at startengine.com/fanbase. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. It is now time for Truth Talks. See you tomorrow. Holla!